let me tell you exactly how I got my brother's $30 million company liquidated, my parents' pension fund frozen, and the deed to my grandmother's house transferred back into my name. All without raising my voice, breaking a single law, or even standing up from the dinner table. It took me 3 months, 2 shell companies, and 1 very patient forensic accountant. And it started with a plate of cold lasagna and a question that was never really a question at all. My grandmother built that house with her own hands. Not metaphorically. She was a contractor in the 70s, one of the first women on high steel in this state, and every nail in the frame of that 3-bedroom colonial was set by her. When she passed, the will was clear. The property went to me. No trust, no conditions, just her signature and mine. I was 24. I didn't know that paperwork could be contested or that families could weaponize grief. For 4 years, I lived there alone. I maintained the garden she planted, repainted the shutters, replaced the water heater when it rusted out. My parents visited twice. My brother, Derek, visited 0 times. He was too busy being a managing director at a fintech firm that he swore was about to IPO. He drove a leased Porsche and talked about valuation caps like they were currency. I drove a Honda with 200,000 miles and talked about property tax exemptions. We didn't have much to say to each other. Then came the family dinner. Sunday evening, my mother's house, lasagna that had been sitting under foil for 40 minutes. I was tired from a double shift, but I went because she said it was important. Derek was already there, sleeves rolled up, wine glass half empty, phone face up on the table. My father was at the head, carving nothing. My mother said, "We need to talk about the house." I thought she meant the gutters. I said I'd already booked a roofer. She said, "No, sweetheart, we think it's time you either take the guest room here or find your own place. Derek's firm is expanding, and he needs to project a certain image. The house in Ridgewood is perfect for client entertaining. It's wasted on a renter." I wasn't a renter. I was the owner. I said that. My father set down the knife. "Technically, the will was never properly probated. Your grandmother wasn't in her right mind when she wrote it. We spoke to a lawyer. If Derek occupies the property for 12 consecutive months, he can file for adverse possession, but we don't want to do it that way. We want you to do the right thing." I looked at Derek. He was scrolling his email. I said, "You want me to give you my house?" He didn't look up. "I want to buy it from you. Fair market value, 40,000 under because you haven't updated the electrical. I'm doing you a favor." The electrical was updated in 2019. I had the permit in my filing cabinet, but I didn't say that. I didn't say anything. I just sat there and let the weight of it settle. They had planned this. They had consulted a lawyer. They had assigned me the guest room in my own mother's house, a room that still had my high school track trophies in the closet, as though I was being demoted to child again. And if I refused, they would try to steal it. I said I needed to think about it. Driving home that night, I didn't cry. I got angry, but not the throwing things kind of angry, the cold, calculating kind. I knew I couldn't fight adverse possession with a moral argument. In court, sentiment doesn't matter. What matters is paper. So I started collecting it. First, I went to the county clerk and pulled the original will. I paid $40 for a certified copy. Then I pulled the deed and confirmed there were no liens, no challenges filed. My name was the only name. Next, I called a real estate attorney. Not the flashy kind, a quiet woman named Marlene who specialized in title disputes. She reviewed the will, the deed, and the adverse possession threat, and she laughed. Not a mean laugh, the laugh of someone who knows the law inside out. She said, "Adverse possession requires hostile, actual, open, notorious, exclusive, and continuous possession for 12 years in this state, not 12 months. Your brother's lawyer either knows that and is bluffing, or doesn't know it and should be disbarred. You have nothing to worry about." I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt cheated. They had tried to intimidate me with a lie. They assumed I wouldn't check, and that told me everything. They saw me as someone who could be pushed. Derek saw me as an obstacle, not a threat. I decided to change that. I didn't want to just keep the house. I wanted him to feel the same helplessness I felt at that dinner table. I wanted him to understand that actions have consequences, and that the person he dismissed as the family's administrative assistant, the one who tracked down Grandma's death certificate, who handled her medical bills, who organized her funeral, was also the person who knew exactly how much paperwork it takes to dismantle a life. I started with Derek's company. It was called Vireo Capital, private fintech, headquartered in a WeWork on the 32nd floor. Their website was all stock photos and vague promises about algorithmic trading. They claimed to manage $300 million in assets. I didn't believe it. I spent a week reading their LinkedIn profiles, their SEC filings, their Glassdoor reviews. Then I spent $500 on a background check service that corporate investigators use. It was the best money I ever spent. What I found was that Vireo Capital had never actually filed a Form ADV with the SEC. For a company that claimed to be a registered investment advisor, that was like a restaurant operating without a health permit. It didn't mean they were guilty yet. Maybe they had an exemption. Maybe they were technically a different classification, but it was a crack. I took that crack to Marlene, my attorney, and she introduced me to a former SEC enforcement lawyer named Paul. Paul was retired, bored, and absolutely vicious about financial fraud. I told Paul I wanted to file an anonymous whistleblower tip. He asked what I had. I showed him the background check, the missing Form ADV, and a few other oddities. Derek's company claimed to have institutional investors, but none of those investors had ever issued a press release about the partnership. Vireo's address was a WeWork, but their marketing materials showed a trading floor. Paul leaned back in his chair and said, "This isn't a crack. This is a canyon. If even half of this is misrepresentation, your brother is looking at civil penalties, criminal referral, and a permanent bar from the securities industry. You understand what you're asking me to do?" I said, "I'm asking you to report a potential violation of securities law. I'm a concerned citizen." He smiled. "That's exactly what you are." We drafted the tip over 3 sessions. Paul insisted on absolute precision, no speculation, no character attacks, just a chronological list of discrepancies. I provided the documents, he provided the language. We submitted it through the SEC's online whistleblower portal on a Tuesday afternoon. Then I waited. While I waited, I turned my attention to my parents. I knew they weren't the primary architects of this scheme. Derek was, but they had sat at that table and told me to vacate my own property. They had chosen his ambition over my security. I needed to understand why. The answer was in their retirement accounts. My father had retired from the post office 5 years ago. He had a modest federal pension and some TSP savings. My mother had never worked full-time. They weren't poor, but they weren't wealthy. Yet my father had recently bought a new boat. My mother had remodeled the kitchen. I started to wonder, was Derek supplementing their income? And if so, was he doing it cleanly? I asked my mother, casually, how the renovation went. She gushed about the quartz countertops, the farmhouse sink. I asked who paid for it. She hesitated, then said, "Your brother helped. He's so generous." I asked if the money was a gift or a loan. She didn't know. I asked if they signed anything. She didn't remember. That was enough for me. I filed a Freedom of Information request for my father's federal pension records. Nothing unusual. Then I filed a request for the boat's registration, which is public record. The boat was titled in my father's name, but the lien holder was a Shell LLC registered in Delaware. I paid a document retrieval service $50 to give me the LLC's formation documents. The registered agent was a law firm that specialized in anonymous corporate structures. The sole member was Derek. Derek had lent my parents money for the boat and the kitchen. That wasn't illegal, but it meant they were financially dependent on him. It explained why they were so eager to give him the house. They were protecting their benefactor. It also meant I had leverage. I didn't approach them directly. Not yet. I was still waiting on the SEC. 6 weeks after we filed the tip, Paul called me. His voice was flat, professional. He said the SEC had opened a formal investigation. They had subpoenaed Virio's records. Derek had retained counsel. I asked if that meant he was in trouble. Paul said, "It means they found enough to keep looking. That's phase 1. Phase 1. I needed more." I started attending public shareholder meetings for companies that Derek had claimed as investors. I sat in the back, took notes, listened for any mention of Virio Capital. There was none. I cross-referenced Virio's client testimonials against professional licensing databases. One of their quoted clients, a supposed hedge fund manager, was actually a real estate agent in Boca Raton who had once sold Derek a condo. I sent that discrepancy to Paul. He sent it to the SEC. 3 months after that dinner, the trap snapped shut. I was at work when my phone buzzed. It was Derek. He never called me. I let it go to voicemail. His voice was clipped, furious. He said, "I don't know what you think you're doing, but you need to stop. The SEC is all over us. They're freezing accounts, demanding investor lists. If you have any information about this, you need to come forward. This is insane." I didn't respond. I went home and made dinner. The next day, I received a cease and desist letter from his lawyer, demanding that I refrain from any further communication with regulatory authorities regarding my client. I framed it and hung it in Grandma's kitchen. Then the dominoes started falling. Virio's largest institutional investor, a pension fund, publicly announced they were suspending their commitment pending the investigation. That triggered a clause in Virio's operating agreement. If they lost a major investor, the other investors had the right to audit. The audit uncovered that Derek had been commingling client funds with operating expenses. Not embezzlement exactly, he hadn't stolen money, but he had used investor capital to pay for marketing, salaries, and his Porsche lease. That's a material misrepresentation. That's fraud.